We're back on North Dakota Today with Kids Connection. And Alexis Hansen is joining me from Red Door Pediatric Therapy. Good morning to you, Alexis.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. Now, today we would like to discuss first-then concepts. I guess I'm not familiar with the term, but you said after you start explaining it, it's going to come back to me. So help me define what it means.
Yeah, first then, it seems a little bit more complex, but I'm sure plenty of people use it throughout their days. It's essentially a sequencing concept. It's something that we're exposed to naturally throughout every day. First we get dressed and then we go to school.
Gotcha.
Or work. It's important because essentially there's a sequence to almost all or most tasks that we do throughout our day.
So what are the benefits? It seems quite obviously that you're explaining to someone, first we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, and you just go through the progression. So what are the actual benefits?
Yeah. Well, a really big one is it creates motivation. We can use it as a way to gain cooperation. It motivates kids to do activities that they don't necessarily like, such as chores. And then it kind of clarifies when they can do what they want. In therapy, I use it a lot with kids who struggle with those structured tasks. First let's do our work or do the puzzle, whatever the task is, and then you get to play.
Right. So I was just going to say, so it's kind of like first we have to do this and then the reward is later. It's not necessarily that all the time, but it is a way to teach them that if we do this, then this is what we get to do afterwards.
Bingo. It makes life easier.
Right.
For everyone, really. It kind of just promises that kid, if they do that unpreferred task, there's a reward or some reinforcement at the end of it.
You also,
another one.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say it kind of brings that concept of time down to an easily understood concept. If we say we'll go outside later, well, what does that mean for a child? They don't really have that sense of time yet. So will we go out in a few minutes, in a couple hours? It kind of just brings it down to their level. And a big one that we use in therapy is it lays a language foundation needed for those multi-step or more complex directions. So if kids become more familiar with first and then, well, when they develop, we can add more steps onto it. First, then, next, before, after. So it kind of can just follow them through that development progression.
Right, and I would imagine that it teaches down the road too. As a child develops and as a child gets older, that concept is ingrained in their mind, and then pretty soon common sense takes over that they know they have to do this before doing that, or it just follows chronologically in life that certain things have to come before others.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, now let's move on to how you go about implementing this type of thing, how you go about teaching it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, so starters, we actually want to be saying the words first and then so that they can learn the meanings of those vocabulary words. And, it's really important to just start young and use everyday activities that happen naturally within the child or your day. So, for example, first we eat dinner and then we eat dessert. Things that kids can kind of anticipate happening in routines so that they become more familiar with that sequence.
Mm-hmm. What age are you talking about here, Alexis, when you first start implementing this?
Yeah, I would say as soon as kids can start following simple directions, just adding on first ball, then sock or whatever, just to kind of make it a little bit more complex.
Okay. You also talk about using visuals to help understand and help get the point across. Tell me about that.
Yeah, using pictures. So typically we have the right side of an unpreferred task or a picture of whatever the task is, and then on the left side is the preferred task. So it can make it a little bit more concrete so they can visualize what's happening and then what's going to happen. You could also use tangible objects, 3D objects, for those younger kids, such as sock, then shoe kind of thing.
What happens if a child isn't getting the hang of it or doesn't understand the concept of this, then? Is that where you guys come in?
You show them. You kind of do it with them. You guys are a team. First, we're going to do this, and we do the task together, and then we do this together to kind of give them those models, to show them how it works, and to reiterate those vocabulary words.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be the this is something that maybe they're not as fond of doing, and then the then being the reward. It can be just the natural progression of any kind of a task, or whether that be putting a puzzle together or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, every day we use that and it just comes naturally to us and we don't really think about it. But when we're little, I mean, we have to learn those sequences before it comes naturally to us. So these are awesome vocabulary words to use while we're kind of learning those sequences of natural tasks.
Alexis, I'm going to ask you how to get a hold of Red Door Pediatric Therapy here in a second, but I want to ask you before we wrap things up, is there anything else that we haven't talked about or something that you want to really specifically review so that this concept sticks with parents and grandparents?
Yeah, and like I kind of said at the beginning, I think it sounds a little bit more complex than it really is, and use it throughout your everyday activities. Even if you think that kids aren't getting it, the more they hear it, the more opportunities they get to implement it, the better.
Absolutely. Alexis, tell us how we get a hold of Red Door Pediatric Therapy.
Absolutely. We have locations in Bismarck, Minot, and Grand Forks, and our central line is 701-222-3175.
Alexis Hansen from Red Door Pediatric Therapy on Kids Connection this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. We've got much more coming up on North Dakota Today right after this.